Amidst all this, I had to listen as well as watch, to listen for the movements of the wild beast or the fiend in yonder side den. But since Mr. Rochester's visit it seemed spellbound. All the night I heard but three sounds, at three long intervals. A step creak, a momentary renewal of the snarling, canine noise, and a deep, human groan. Then my own thoughts worried me. What crime was this that lived incarnate in this sequestered mansion, and could neither be expelled nor subdued by the honor? What mystery that broke out, now in fire and now in blood, at the deadest hours of night? What creature was it that, masked in an ordinary woman's face and shape, uttered the voice now of a mocking demon and anon of a carrion-seeking bird of prey? And this man I bent over, this commonplace quiet stranger, how had he become involved in the web of horror? And why had the fury flown on him? What made him seek this quarter of the house at an untimely season, when he should have been asleep in bed? I had heard Mr. Rochester assign him an apartment below. What brought him here? And why now? Was he so tame under the violence of treachery done him? Why did he so quietly submit to the concealment Mr. Rochester enforced? Why did Mr. Rochester enforce this concealment? His guest had been outraged, his own life on a former occasion had been hideously plotted against, and both attempts he smothered in secrecy and sank in oblivion. Lastly, I saw Mr. Mason was submissive to Mr. Rochester, that the impetuous will of the latter held complete sway over the inertness of the former. The few words which had passed between them assured me of this. It was evident that, in their former intercourse, the passive disposition of the one had been habitually influenced by the active energy of the other. Whence then had risen Mr. Rochester's dismay when he heard of Mr. Mason's arrival? Why had the mere name of this unresting individual, whom his word now suffered to control like a child, fallen on him a few hours since, as a thunderbolt might fall on a oak? Oh, I could not forget his look and his paleness when he whispered, "Jane, I've got a blow. I've got a blow, Jane." I could not forget how the arm trembled, which he had rested on my shoulder, and it was no light matter which could thus bow the resolute spirit and thrill the vigorous frame of Fairfax Rochester. "When will he come? When will he come?" I cried inwardly, as the night lingered and lingered, as my bleeding patient drooped, moaned, sickened, and neither day nor aid arrived. I had again and again held the water to Mason's white lips, again and again offered him the stimulating salts. My efforts seemed ineffectual. Either bodily or mental suffering, or loss of blood, or all three combined, were fast prostrating his strength. He moaned so, and looked so weak, wild, and lost, I feared he was dying, and I might not even speak to him. The candle, wasted at last, went out. As it expired, I perceived streaks of grey light edging the window curtains. Dawn was then approaching. Presently I heard Pilot bark far below, out of his distant kennel in the courtyard. Hope revived, nor was it unwarranted. In 5 minutes more, the grating key, the yielding lock, warned me my watch was relieved. It could not have lasted more than 2 hours. Many a week has seemed shorter. Mr. Rochester entered, and with him the surgeon he had been to fetch. "Now, Carter, be on the alert," he said to this last. "I give you but half an hour for dressing the wound, fastening the bandages, getting the patient downstairs and all." "But is he fit to move, sir?" "No doubt of it. It is nothing serious. He is nervous. His spirits must be kept up. Come, set to work." Mr. Rochester drew back the thick curtain, drew up the Holland blind, let in all the daylight he could, and I was surprised and cheered to see how far dawn was advanced, what rosy streaks were beginning to brighten the east. Then he approached Mason, whom the surgeon was already handling.
"Now, my good fellow, how are you?"
he asked.
"She's done for me, I fear,"
was the faint reply.
"Not a whit. Courage. This day fortnight you'll hardly be a pin the worse of it. You've lost a little blood, that's all. Carter, assure him there's no danger." "I can do that consciously,"
said Carter, who had now undone the bandages.
"Only I wish I could have got here sooner. He would not have bled so much. But how is it? The flesh on the shoulder is torn as well as cut. This wound was not done with a knife. There have been teeth here?" "She bit me," he murmured. "She worked me like a tigress when Rochester got the knife from her." "You should have not yelled. You should have grappled with her at once," said Mr. Rochester. "But under such circumstances what could one do?"
returned Mason.
"Oh, it was frightful,"
he added, shuddering.
"And I did not expect it. She looked so quiet at first." "I warned you,"
was his friend's answer.
"I said be on your guard when you go near her. Besides, you might have waited till tomorrow and had me with you. It was mere folly to attempt the interview tonight, and alone."
"I thought I could have done some good."
You thought.
Yes, it makes me impatient to hear you, but however, you have suffered and are likely to suffer enough for not taking my advice. So I'll say no more. Carter, hurry, the sun will soon rise, and I must have him off."
"Directly, sir. The shoulder is just bandaged. I must look to this or the wound in the arm. She had her teeth here too, I think."
"She sucked the blood. She said she drained my heart," said Mason. I saw Mr. Rochester shudder. A singularly marked expression of disgust, horror, hatred, warped his countenance almost to distortion, but he only said,
"Come, be silent, Richard, and never mind her gibberish. Don't repeat it."
"I wish I could forget it," was the answer.
"You will, when you are out of the country. When you get back to Spanish Town, you may think of her as dead and buried, or rather, you need not think of her at all."
"Impossible to forget this night."
"It is not impossible. Have some energy, man. You thought you were as dead as a herring 2 hours since, and you are all alive and talking now. There, Carter has done with you, or nearly so. I'll make you decent in a trice. Jane, take this key, go down into my bedroom, and walk straight forward into my dressing room. Open the top drawer of the wardrobe, and take out a clean shirt and neck handkerchief. Bring them here, and be nimble."
I went, sought the repository he had mentioned, found the articles named, and returned with them.
"Now," said he, "go to the other side of the bed while I order his toilet. But don't leave the room. You may be wanted again."
I retired as directed.
"Was anybody stirring below when you went down, Jane?"
inquired Mr. Rochester presently. "No, sir. All was very still."
"We should get you off Canley Deck, and it will be better, both for your sake and for that of the poor creature in yonder. I have striven long to avoid exposure, and I should not like it to come at last. Here, Carter, help him on with this waistcoat. Where did you leave your third clock? You can't travel a mile without that, I know, in this damned cold climate. In your room? Jane, run down to Mr. Mason's room, the one next mine, and fetch a clock you will see there."
Again I ran and again returned, bearing an immense mantle lined and hedged with fur.
"Now I've another errand for you,"
said my untiring master.
"You must away to my room again. What a mercy you are shod with velvet, Jane. A clod-hopping messenger would never do at this juncture. You must open the middle drawer of my toilet table and take out a little phial and a little glass you will find there. Quick!"
I flew thither and back, bringing the desired vessels.
That's well. Now, doctor, I should take the liberty of administering a dose myself, on my own responsibility. I got this cordial at Rome, of an Italian charlatan, a fellow you would have kicked. Carter, it is not a thing to be used indiscriminately, but it is good upon occasion, as now, for instance. Jane, a little water.
He held out a tiny glass, and I half filled it from the water bottle on the washstand.
That will do. Now wet the lip of the phial.
I did so. He measured 12 drops of a crimson liquid and presented it to Mason.
Drink, Richard. It will give you the heart you lack for an hour or so. But will it hurt me? Is it inflammatory? Drink, drink, drink.
Mr. Mason obeyed, because it was evidently useless to resist. He was dressed now, still looked pale, but he was no longer gory and solid. Mr. Rochester let him sit 3 minutes after he had swallowed the liquid. He then took his arm.
Now I'm sure you can get on your feet,
he said.
Try.
The patient rose.
Carter, take him under the other shoulder. Be of good cheer, Richard. Step out. That's it.
I do feel better, remarked Mr. Mason.
I'm sure you do. Now, Jane, trip on before us, away to the back stairs, and bolt the side passage door, and tell the driver of the post-chaise you will see in the yard, or just outside, for I told him not to drive his rattling wheels over the pavement, to be ready. We are coming. And Jane, if anyone is about, come to the foot of the stairs and hem.
It was by this time 5:30, and the sun was on the point of rising, but I found the kitchen still dark and silent. The side passage door was fastened. I opened it, with as little noise as possible. All the yard was quiet, but the gate stood wide open, and there was a post-chaise, with horses ready harnessed, and driver seated on the box, stationed outside. I approached him, and said the gentlemen were coming. He nodded, and then I looked carefully round and listened. The stillness of early morning slumbered everywhere. The curtains were yet drawn over the servants' chamber windows. Little birds were just twittering in the blossom-blanched orchard trees, whose boughs dropped like white garlands over the wall enclosing one side of the yard. The carriage horses stamped from time to time in their close stables. All else was still. The gentlemen now appeared. Mason, supported by Mr. Rochester and the surgeon, seemed to walk with tolerable ease. They assisted him into the chaise. Carter followed.
Take care of him,
said Mr. Rochester to the latter,
and keep him at your house till he's quite well. I shall ride over in a day or two to see how he gets on. Richard, how is it with you?
The fresh air revives me, Fairfax.
Leave the window open on his side, Carter. There is no wind. Goodbye, Dick.
Fairfax.
Well, what is it?
Let her be taken care of. Let her be treated as tenderly as may be. Let her... He stopped and burst into tears.
I do my best and have done it, and will do it,
was the answer. He shut up the chaise door, and the vehicle drove away.
Yet would to God there was an end of all this,
added Mr. Rochester, as he closed and barred the heavy yard gates.